Step 5. Build your optimal study environment. Your environment, the area around you, the things that interact with your senses, the systems you interface with to do your work, is usually influential on your ability to study and work effectively. Design it deliberately. This step will help you optimize your environment in 4 major ways: finding the best study location, selecting great study music/noise, limiting real-world distractions, limiting technological distractions. Let's get into it. Location. For me, one of the most important aspects of a study location is the vibe. By that, I mean, what are the other people around me doing? If the people around me are working diligently, then I feel more motivated to work. In fact, it almost feels like an obligation at that point. I'd almost feel like I'm bringing down the collective productivity of the room if I slacked off. For that reason, I'm a huge fan of studying and working at libraries, coffee shops, and co-working places. I actually took this to the extreme during my senior year. I had taken on an independent study class, my method of weaseling out of a required class I didn't want to take, and my project was to build an iPhone app. The only problem was, I didn't know how to do it. Between my other classes and projects, I was also having a lot of trouble finding the motivation to crack open the iOS programming book I'd bought. So, I decided to go nuclear. It was about a month into the semester when my friend Alex told me about a new conference going on in Austin, Texas called FU Weekend. The entire point of the conference was to get a bunch of people together who all had creative projects that just weren't getting finished, and to finish them. There was an application process, and the organizers were selective in order to keep the conference limited to people who would actually show up and do work. I applied and got accepted about a week before the conference started. To get there, I had to drop $600 on a plane ticket to Austin and skip an exam that I hadn't known was on the same day as the conference. I got to make it up, fortunately. That's a lot of money and effort just to finish a school project, but it paid off. I ended up meeting a ton of awesome people over that weekend, including one of the people who works at Treehouse, an amazing learning library similar to lynda.com. He pointed me to their iOS course, which turned out to be much easier for me to follow than the book. Over the course of just 2 days, I learned the basics of iPhone programming and built 2 apps. I got 95% of the work for the entire independent study project done in that weekend, and I attribute that to the fact that I was surrounded by a group of insanely motivated people who were all working hard on their own projects. There was a feeling that great things were being created there, and I wanted my weekend to have a great output as well. Another thing to take into account with your choice of location is the specific tasks you have on your plate, and what tools you need for them. If you need to write a huge research paper, for example, the library is a great choice because you're surrounded by research materials you may need. Your environment can reduce the friction involved in getting into your work by giving you easy access to tools and resources you may need. Think about this factor when selecting your study spot. Study music. Listening to music while studying is one of those little things that people like to argue about. Some people think it hurts your concentration, some think it helps. For me, it definitely helps. So all I'm going to say about this before recommending some great music sources is to experiment. Figure out what works for you, take steps to know yourself, and study better going forward. Also, the whole music versus no music debate is pretty black and white on the surface, as there are a ton of different varieties of music and music you can study with. Music with vocals, purely instrumental music, ambient noise, white noise, or pink/brown noise. The type of music I prefer depends on the type of work I'm doing. If I'm going through a process such as creating graphics for a post, something I've done countless times, I can listen to anything. It might be metalcore, it might be rap, or it might be weird remixes of anime theme songs. Basically, whatever boosts my energy levels is good. This goes for purely logical tasks as well, such as programming. Even if I'm writing code I haven't had to write before, I can put on any kind of music and be fine. When it comes to writing, reading, or studying, it's a different story. At that point, I need music that's 99% instrumental, and it needs to be somewhat calm. I can recommend several artists if you're looking to expand your selections. 65 Days of Static, electronic influenced post-rock. Jordan Tice, instrumental bluegrass. Pretty Lights, chill electronic. Balmorhea, post-rock. And if I don't stop myself, I could probably fill another book with recommendations. I like curating music. Actually, a lot of my favorite study music picks are individual tracks off of albums that wouldn't otherwise be fit for studying. For example, many metal bands have one or two instrumental tracks or interludes in the middle of their albums. Additionally, you'll find plenty of great study music in the soundtracks of movies, video games, and anime. There's also a thriving online community for a PC game called Touhou, and within it, you'll find hundreds of fan-made songs, many of which are piano-only or otherwise fit for studying. If you're looking for a good place to find great new study music, I've been working on a YouTube playlist for the last year called the Ultimate Study Music Playlist. As of this writing, it's got 151 songs of all different genres. I always put it on when I need to read or write something. I'm listening to it right now, actually. While you're at it, you may want to subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. If the content in this book is helpful to you, you'll find a lot more there. I release new videos every week. So what if you don't work well with music at all? Well, you can study in absolute silence, or you can try out a couple of other options. The first alternative is white noise, which I would describe as the sound of static or possibly of a fan blowing. It's constant, unobtrusive, and a lot of people like it better. You can also opt for pink noise or brown noise, both of which emphasize lower frequencies than white noise. Pink noise is a good middle ground. Here are a few places where you can get good white noise. Simply Noise, simple, offers white, pink, and brown noise. White Noise and Company gives you a much more customizable spectrum to play with. Celestial White Noise. This is a 10-hour YouTube video with a unique, spicy white noise that I like better than the others. Space Odyssey, another 10-hour YouTube video. This one's a bit more subdued. Lastly, there's ambient noise. This is basically noise you'd hear in specific environments, such as coffee shops or during events like thunderstorms. I actually much prefer ambient noise to both white noise and silence, and have a few different resources for it that you can check out. Coffeetivity. Coffee shop din, multiple choices. Rainy mood, rain. Sound sleeping, lots of different environmental sounds, and you can mix them. Ravenclaw common room. This site actually has tons of ambient soundscapes, but I just had to highlight this one. Bonus, actually go to a place with ambient noise. Pro tip, try mixing some of the ambient sounds with music from the study playlist. Personally, I like mixing rainy mood or coffeetivity with my music. Limiting real-world distractions. Back in step 4, I mentioned something called the flow state, a state of mind where you're perfectly focused on the task at hand. When you're in the flow state, time seems to slip by. Your mind is attuned to its job, and things seem to get done with ease. It's total immersion in what you've set your mind to. When you study or work on a project, you want to find your way to the flow state. It won't always happen, but you want to get into it as much as you possibly can. For that reason, distractions are your worst enemy when you're trying to study. They pull you right out of the flow state, break your concentration, and impede your progress. So how do you limit your exposure to distractions and also increase your ability to ignore the ones that do crop up? Let's start with the first one. How to avoid them as much as possible. As I mentioned earlier, your choice of study location really matters for avoiding distractions. It may actually be the most important thing. I mean, think about it. How much studying could you get done about the Mongol invasion of China if you were actually at the Mongol invasion of China? Probably none, because a crazed Mongol would stand on his horse and shoot you in the face with an arrow. Boom, I'm a genius. Even if you didn't happen to get the one time machine off eBay that actually works, you're still going to need to be discerning about location. Studying in your dorm while your roommates play Guitar Hero is probably not going to go as well as if you chose the library. So be selective about your study location. But also remember that it's still largely personal. So don't think that one person's be-all and all mantra of library or nothing needs to be the rule for you as well. Another huge source of distraction is people. Both those who are working on the same task as you and those who just happen by. When my friends and I would try to get together in the dorm's shared den and study, we usually would end up messing around with Duke Nukem soundboards and throwing things at each other. Studying with my friends was a bad idea. Getting together with some people from my class, however, was much better. I got a lot done that way. People who just happen by are also bad news bears for your productivity. Assuming you get a job with a cubicle after graduation, you'll probably have to deal with the annoying coworker who saunters by your cubicle to make small talk about his kid's pee-wee football game last night, while you're simultaneously trying to finish a huge project for the boss and will your brain to just leave this cruel world so it won't have to hear about his kids anymore. These people don't magically become distraction machines when they get jobs. Oh no, They are meticulously honing their skills in college. And college is a much more fertile ground for digging up tantalizing distractions. They will find you in the library and let you know they're going out for pizza, then seeing that movie you've really been wanting to see right after. Oh, you've got a calc final tomorrow morning? Hey, you'll be fine, bro. Don't worry about it. Honestly, the best thing you can do in this situation is to build up a strong tolerance for saying no to fun things. Make it difficult for them to contact you. You can close your door or find a secret study spot to avoid them physically, but you've also got electronic communication to worry about. I'll deal with that in the next section, along with other technology-based distractions. Limiting technology-based distractions. When it comes to technology, probably the worst distraction you face is the vastness of the internet. The best way to prevent yourself from wasting time online is to block your access to the places where you waste it. Plain and simple. While blocking specific sites won't prevent you from finding new ones to waste time at, it's still effective. The idea is to make procrastination more effort than it's worth. If your brain is used to jetting over to Reddit or Facebook when you don't want to work, block those two sites. It'll take more mental effort to Google for something specific to waste time looking at than it will for you to just lazily scroll through your news feed. Here are some apps you can use to block familiar time-wasting sites when you're working. Stay focused. Chrome extension. This is what I use personally. Focal filter. Windows. Blocks access in all browsers. Cold turkey. Windows. Like focal filter, but can block other programs too. Paid, but you set the price and proceeds go to charity. Self-control, Mac, same as focal filter. If you don't want to use an app, you can also permanently block sites by editing the hosts file on Windows or etc/hosts on OS X. To get really nuclear, make these changes on an administrator account on your computer. Set a really complex password for that account and store it somewhere safe on paper. Do all your work on a non-admin account and you'll have no way to change your block settings unless you go get the password. This is way more intense than most people will need, but desperate times sometimes call for desperate measures. If you're one of those students with more than one computer, as an IT major I always was, you can further remove the temptation to waste time by dedicating one of your computers solely to work. Don't install stuff like Steam, social media clients, or chat clients unless they're work-related. You can use the blocking techniques above to completely lock the computer down if needed as well. If you use Chrome and have Chrome Sync enabled for your account, consider using a different Google account on this computer so your time-wasting bookmarks don't sync over. If you don't want to do that, at least hide the bookmarks bar. It's even more effective if you use this computer in a different location than where you use your leisure computer. Find a specific spot on campus, in a coffee shop, or somewhere else you like and think of it as your office. Or pick new locations whenever you like, but don't use the same room you game in. Don't have a second computer? You don't need to go buy a new one just to use this technique. Just use computer labs on campus to do your work. I actually did this quite often in school, and the lack of access to all of my time-wasting programs and bookmarks really helped me. It's hard to slack off when you're using a computer with nothing but IE, blah, and Word, especially if you left your phone back in your dorm. Now, even if you've gone to nuclear lengths to keep yourself away from distracting websites, you've still got other people to deal with. If your friends are messaging you constantly, you're not going to be able to get much done. So make sure you've signed out of Facebook, GChat, and other messaging services while you're studying. In order to stay contactable, you can study with Pomodoros and allow yourself to check messages during the short breaks between each one. Lastly, your phone can be a huge distraction while you're studying, especially if you've got a lot of notifications coming in all the time. When your phone buzzes with a notification, it triggers a habit to check it. For most people, that habit is really hard to avoid carrying out. Avoid the trigger entirely by turning off most notifications on your phone. Seriously, you don't need to be notified whenever you get an email or Facebook message. You can easily check those later on. Another thing you might try doing is putting your phone on Do Not Disturb mode. On the iPhone, this mode prevents calls, texts, and notifications from making any noise. I often use it when I really need to focus.